The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
Episode number 5 is here. Fresh, unscripted. Well, maybe a little teeny bit scripted. There's just so much cool shit happening that I'm kind of feeling like this little bit of anxiety about it. Imposter syndrome, some call it. Like all the kudos we're getting, they're all just like part of this like elaborate prank. And any minute now, Ashton Kutcher is going to come jumping out from behind my studio closet. The point is, thank you. Thank you so much. We love you guys. You're awesome. We could not do this without you. And we appreciate all the love and support. And we don't make any money to like pay the rent with this show. It's the currency that we get paid in, I guess, is bringing people joy and developing this platform to bring attention to all the amazing people in our community. And that so outweighs the cash. Though some cash wouldn't hurt. Wouldn't mind a trip to Ibiza or London. I love that city. Did you know London is the city in the world that you are most likely to have a one-night stand in? Yeah, true story. I read that in something. Anyway, on that note, I'm just going to go ahead and say that we're really happy producer Meg's brother is back home from a stint in the hospital sheets. We love you, Paul. Get better. And I feel like an absolute little wiener bitching about my strep throat that I'm just kind of still getting over right now. And all this recording is probably not helping. But let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Today's guest is Taz. Taz works with NASA and UCSD, the University of California, San Diego, on a program designed to excite our future generations about pursuing a career in the sciences. So, in case I didn't feel insignificant enough already, I had to sit down with this guy. And look, I'm going to be upfront with you, listener. This is not my best work as an interviewer. I mean, I Taz didn't say anything. I don't know if he noticed, but I know because I've been doing this for 4 years and this is not my best work. Leading up to the interview, we had some snafus. We're still working out some of the kinks in our booking procedures and stuff. Logistical things like just growing pains that any show has to go through. It's no big deal. But we had miscommunication. So I end up having to race back to my studio in order to meet with Taz in time. I'm already a little embarrassed and my adrenaline is pumping a little more than it should be before an interview. Now, listen, I have a fair amount of confidence in my intelligence. I know. I know. You looked at photos of me, or you might know me in person, or whatever. And you think there's no way this man with the body of a Greek god and the obvious sexual stamina of 10 stallions is like smart, quote unquote. But I'm no dummy. I'm not a total dummy, I swear. But when talking to Taz, I felt like a complete idiot. And I was relieved to discover that this is not an uncommon thing that happens when talking to Taz. I've had other friends confirm similar feelings of insecurity. There are several parts during this interview where Taz just shuts me the fuck down. Because I'm still processing something he said several sentences ago. And then he's reached like the point that he's already made. He's made his point. And so then it's back to me as the interviewer to cover the awkward silence by either talking, flapping my mouth, or asking the next question. And I end up feeling like I asked some really dumb fucking questions. Look, you know what? They weren't dumb. I just felt really dumb asking them. And then he made me feel extra dumb by responding. He's brilliant and I'm just this like nasally voice asking silly questions. Look, you're gonna get to hear what my insecure voice sounds like. I may not have been ready for this level of interview, I felt. After Taz left, I stood in front of my mirror and just kind of stared at my penis for a while, just to make sure to remind myself that I'm still a man. It kind of took me back to an interview I did with Wade Davis. We did with Wade Davis a few years ago on Crappy Awesome podcast. Wade is let me see if I can read this correctly. An anthropologist, botanist, and he's a National Geographic explorer in residence, and he's the author of The Serpent and the Rainbow. And that was the last time that I felt like such a total dummy during an interview. So Taz, you are in good company. It's a good time though. I mean, you may not have noticed all this stuff if I hadn't pointed it all out to you, but I find it extra entertaining when you can kind of snicker in the background at how terrible I'm being and how insecure I'm feeling. But let's go ahead and get it started. I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There were sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was a fly with the balls and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, because there ain't no one for to give you no name.
Tech, who runs an education project for kids.
Yeah.
So there's a whole process, and my entire job is built around like taking photos of the Earth for children around the world.
Yeah, because Meg was saying that I got to get you on because there's a story about you punching a crater into the moon, apparently.
There are pictures online, in fact.
This has happened.
Yes.
Okay.
The project I finished in 2012 was a project where we took photos of the moon for kids, and the spacecraft that were involved were decommissioned, and you can hear the air quotes or not. I'm not sure, but the
listeners, he is doing air quotes. Look, let's. I want to get to that in just a bit. This is so we're teasing so that we can get to that part of the conversation a little bit later.
All right.
I want to kind of get started on how you ended up in the community. Like, what was going on in your life, and where were you right before you discovered these crazy fucking hippies?
So I was in one of the most lucky places of anybody's life ever. I'm blessed to have had this chance, but I was living about half a block off the beach in Ocean Beach.
Nice.
I happened to move into an apartment complex at the same time. Three other people moved into this apartment complex, and we became friends, and there was a certain amount of egging one another on for our own entertainment purposes going on.
What year is this?
This is 2001.
Okay.
And over the next couple of years, we acquired a few more friends, and suddenly there was parties going on a regular basis. And on one of our parties, we decided, it'd be a great idea to make a parade happen in the middle of Ocean Beach.
Okay.
This was 1 a.m. on a Saturday.
Okay. Were you working in the tech field at this time as well? What was going on during the day?
I have been in the tech industry since I graduated college back in the 90s.
Okay.
I've always been working higher education tech, though.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I work at UCSD now. So.
Yeah, beautiful.
I was just a techie. I had moved out here only about 5 months beforehand. Mm-hmm. I had been born and raised and grew up, went to college at the place I was been born, got my first job at the college that I was born at, sort of like 25 years of this one little place.
Yeah.
And I was like, I gotta get the hell out of here.
Where is this one little place?
This is Rochester, New York.
Okay.
So upstate New York. And after
what was sort of like the biggest culture shock you dealt with when you came out here?
not flicking a cigarette butt out the window.
I
got yelled at so badly that I was like, what I do? Like, it never even crossed my mind that was a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know, and
I had the exact same experience just like a few months ago. And I actually had to do community service just a few days ago for that. So I'm very familiar, except I don't know if you actually got caught by the police.
No, my friend screamed at me. Like, I'm in the middle of, they're in the passenger seat, in the back seat, and they're all like, what are you screaming at me. I'm like, what did I do? What did I do?
What was it that brought you to San Diego initially?
Quite literally, sun. When I decided to move from the hometown, I looked at where all my college friends were, and it was pretty much all the major cities on the east and west coast. And I went to NOAA, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association, the National Weather Service, basically. And I looked up the statistics for all the cities. I'm like, as long as I'm moving from my hometown. And by the way, Rochester and San Diego have the exact same amount of partly cloudy days.
Really?
And San Diego has 2.5 times as many sunny days.
Okay. that would make sense.
And it won the sun contest hands down by like a huge margin. Yeah. I was like, yeah, hell, sure, I'll move there.
I had what was it, like a science professor in community college that was explaining to us that, perhaps this is something you can confirm or deny, that the Southern California has a climate that only 3% of the Earth's surface has, which is called a Mediterranean climate.
We are a Mediterranean climate. I don't know about the 3% whatsoever. I know most of Baja California, for example, is also Mediterranean.
Yeah.
That's
and
why.
How does that work? Let's give a little quick science lesson.
How does that work? From what, a geological perspective, a geographic perspective?
Sure. Hit me with whatever you got.
So it really comes down to how much rain you're getting and the land types. So very mountainous, low on the rain scales, fairly dry, arid, lots of sun.
The ocean kind of seems to work as like an air conditioning unit.
Yeah. So, large bodies of water are always the temperature moderators. Yeah. So if the land is really hot, the water will be cooler. If the land is really cold, the water will be warmer. It takes longer to move the water temperature. Yeah.
So armed with all this knowledge and a cigarette, you come out to Southern California.
I come out to
pursue your
San
millions.
Diego, sight unseen. I called a friend of mine and said, can I crash on your couch? So I gave away, sold, or broke everything that I owned except the small things that fit my truck, and I just started driving across the country, and I ended up crashing on West Point Loma and OB. Yeah. And
not a bad place to crash.
Oh God, I love OB. I spent the next 13 years in Ocean Beach, so
so there you are, and then so you're living there by yourself. You're kind of building up, creating your network, and then you move into this house with all these crazy people.
Actually, my network was completely gone where I lived.
Okay,
I just ran for where my friends had all left over the past 3-4 years.
You didn't burn all your bridges; they just left.
Yeah, all my bridges had moved to these cities that I was looking at. So I just had nothing left in Rochester except family and a lot of boredom and winter. Yeah. And I ran for the coast, and I didn't know I was moving into Ocean Beach. I didn't know I was moving in, 6 blocks from the ocean. I didn't know I was going to get my first apartment being literally 8 houses from the ocean. But my first 4 or 5 months I was in San Diego. I'm living, there was 9 of us in a 3-bedroom apartment.
Oh, good Lord.
3 of us had talked to other friends in the house, and we had all moved the same week without anybody else in the house knowing that they were going to have 3 house guests that were all going to be staying there.
It's like the tiniest frat house in history.
No, it was very much the anti-frat house. Let's see, there was the gay couple, there was the other gay couple, there was the male-female couple, but they're both bisexual, and then there was the one other gay guy who moved in, and me, and one other heterosexual guy who moved in. Yeah. And, it was very much a stoner house.
No, not an OB.
High-tech stoner house. Yeah. Everybody there is computer-based, almost all of us have major tech careers. So
it seems like that would be like an environment where there's a lot of ideas bouncing back and forth, like a lot of like, hey, we should try doing this.
In that house, not so much. There's a lot of TV work.
Okay, just a lot of pizza.
It was after I moved into my own place and happened to land in a place with a whole bunch of different other people.
Yeah.
That I started really expanding who and what I am. That was the house where I happened to move into the same time a couple other people moved in. And we started egging one another on.
Yeah,
It's a
and then so you
whole
decide.
new group of friends that just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Just happened to move in together. And within 2 years, this 4-unit, 2 bedrooms per unit, all of them were occupied by us or our friends. The 3 garages got modified from dojos to black rooms to offices to dance studios to band studios. Like, we just took over this place and we turned it into our place. And we really gelled fast, created lots, and we were, doing all these weird and interesting things when the burners found us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what kind of stuff was going on? What were some of the things you were doing?
So, like darkroom, learning how to photograph. We had a communal deck raising. We had this weird rock-filled cement area out in the front of the apartment complex. One of the guys was working construction. He said, hey, I just got all this extra redwood from this deck we deconstructed. So we built an entire deck and then we started having things like bands play on the deck, or I remember one night we did a talent show. And everybody was just around, I'm going to do a talent show. My brother happened to be out at that time, and I made him do the who's on first, what's on second routine with me.
Of course. Is that Lauren Hardy?
That
Three
is...
Stooges? No, it's Lauren Hardy, I believe.
No, it's Abbott and Costello.
Abbott and Costello. A little bit further back, yeah.
A little bit newer than Lauren Hardy.
Yeah, okay. There we go. Obviously, dates are not my strong point.
So you're single, huh?
Yeah. Well, I'm working on it. So the parade. You started talking about the parade.
So the parade. The parade is one of the... it started with like 20 of us banging on instruments, and like 7 years later, there's like 500 people dressed up like Smurfs walking down the street in Ocean Beach. Like... One of those lessons I had to learn at sort of a construction of large things process is that you're always at risk of becoming a victim of your own success. Like after a certain point, it was really tough to make a parade happen and still maintain the emotional core it needed to be what it was successful.
Yeah. The mission of the parade was lost in the crowd, it sounds like.
Well, how to describe it?
Well, what was
the name of the
parade?
group is the Heathens, right?
Okay.
But actually, the full name is like the Miscellaneous Heathens and Assorted Friends.
Okay.
Most of us were like not Christian in this group. At the same time, there were like these 2 Christian professional women's soccer players playing. So we had to come up with a name that would include them. So they were the Associated Friends. But we created this group, the Miscellaneous Heathens. It's still around and still a group of friends. But we started doing this party and parade, and that was one of our main regular things, I should say.
What was the initial idea behind the parade? This is 2001, by the way, is that right?
2001. No, this was about 2002 was the first one. Okay. Have you never been in a parade?
No, actually, I have not.
Oh, well, I can highly recommend it. They're a lot of fun.
That is a pleasure. I have not partaken. You know what? The Million Bunny March, does that count on the playa?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen it.
Yeah, there's they do it like 3 or 4 days in Black Rock City where you get all these people together and everybody's wearing bunny ears and you start marching against the humans. And I think you arrive in one of the massive art cars where the wolves come out and they're marching in defense of the humans. So you can choose which side you want to be on. And honestly, I lost interest about an hour into it. But yeah, I mean, that's the closest to a parade experience I have, I think.
I would count it as a parade. It's certainly worthwhile as a parade then.
Did the parade have a path that you guys had planned out?
First couple of years, we just kind of wandered down that way. Again, the numbers of people were small enough. I mean, it went from like 20 to like 70 the following year. It was only later on that we really like how and where should we get these people to Newport Avenue? How should we, what's our path so that we did think about it to a certain extent.
I imagine at some point somebody approached you about having to get a permit of sorts.
No, towards the end we actually started to try and move into that realm, and we realized that it wasn't going to work in terms of what the parade was, how we would do it, where everybody was, and where to make this happen.
Yeah.
And as I said, there was a certain amount of message was being lost when too many people didn't know what the message was.
So what was the message? That's what I'm
here
trying
to entertain and confuse you.
Okay. Because confuse you're succeeding on so far.
right. But the object was to either have you smile or look confused.
Okay.
And a lot of people came through, just having seen us and thinking, woohoo, anarchy, and now I get to break windows. Yeah. No! We have no desire to harmfully affect anybody around us. The entire time we did that parade, I think there was only one thing that got accidentally damaged, and we paid for it like the next day.
Yeah. So what would you tell people when you're trying to prepare them for potentially joining the parade? Are they wearing costumes? Is there a mission statement?
So most of the party and getting into the party is sort of that setup.
Okay.
The problem is that, again, once it got it was just an apartment complex.
Yeah.
How many people can you really hold in an apartment complex if you pack it out? You'd be surprised how many.
Yes.
But we would still have so many people waiting for the parade and only joining for the parade that you couldn't talk to them ever.
Yeah.
One of our famous ones we had the reservation desk. So the very first question as somebody came into the party is, do you have any reservations? The correct answer is no. If you said yes, then we went through this gigantic long list of do you have any reservations about honking like a geese? Do you have any reservations about the Lord Savior your Jesus? Do you have any reservations? It was just, that sort of silly, surrealistic questions that went on. You had to have a costume to come into the party. And very early on, one of our solutions to the fact that somebody didn't show up with a costume was to put them into Depends. And again, down the road, years later...
Depends diapers,
okay. Adult diapers. Years down the road, people be running in with the Depends already on.
That was supposed to be a punishment.
Well, no, it was literally the only thing we had to put on, to put them into a costume.
Why did you have Depends laying around the apartment complex?
I don't have the slightest clue, actually.
So, okay, sorry, we're getting somewhere here because I think I'm certain we have some listeners that right now are taking notes on and they want to start their own parade. Okay, so the party started first. And in order to get into the party, there's things you had to go through, hoops you had to jump through.
Yep.
Correct. And
or
once
desks
you're in
to jump over.
Desks to jump over, reservations to list.
Mazes to wander through.
You created a maze.
Several years we had mazes. 1 year we had the Smurf porn booth. Every year was, as it went on, themes came along and just came out. But we always made the party a very good party.
Awesome. Okay, so the party, what time did the party generally start?
Somewhere between 8 and 10
p.m. Mm-hmm. Okay, because I wouldn't put it past you to be 8 a.m. either.
No, it wasn't. Most of the day was spent in setup.
Okay, gotcha. So 8 p.m. the party starts. People come in. They go through all the stuff they got to go through in order to get in. What time did the actual parade begin?
When we felt like it, or when the cops got too annoyed about the party.
Okay, so you guys would pour out into the streets after the cops showed up and said you guys are making too much noise in this one location.
The one time we flipped it around, did the parade first, and then the party second. We made a tactical error of putting a punk band on top of an RV in the driveway. Supposedly, we got noise complaints from a 17-block radius.
Wow. That is impressive.
Well, the fact that we got through the entire first band before they like really came after us was amazing.
Okay. I'm trying to get my mind around where I would have the balls to throw a party which ends at whatever, let's say 1 a.m., 2 a.m., something like that. And then you guys pour down to the streets and there was not any sort of concern about potential legal repercussions.
Not at that age. Honestly, because we had such a good group of people who understood we're here to have fun, we're here to make smiles, we're here to make confusion if we don't make a smile.
Yeah.
The actual risks were fairly low.
Yeah.
As I said, we damaged one thing by accident once. Otherwise, the streets were immaculate. We didn't damage anything. If we were noisy in front of you, you know what? The noise was moving on in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So from and it was definitely interesting watching the various years how cops reacted to us. Once there's that many people, they either have to wait and gather their strength, or one cop tries to pull the power play, you must stop, and what's it gonna do to 200 people?
Yeah.
And again, no damage, none of that type of stuff.
There's always that one. It's usually this one cop though. I mean, I had the same experience.
Quite frankly, several years the cops were excellent to us. Just stay on your side of you're walking in the street technically.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this sort of just stay on your side of the road.
Yeah.
And we'd stay on our side of the road or the sidewalk, and you just walk down the street. You don't stop. You're not trying to. You're really not trying to break the law at all.
Sure.
And when done right, we didn't break the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We may have annoyed the law.
Yeah.
We may have annoyed some of our neighbors, but quite frankly, we didn't break the law.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so it starts to double. The numbers are going up. And how many years does it go for?
The last one was the 9th one.
Okay.
And that one, actually, the parade route had already been discussed with the cops.
Yeah.
We had actually had the event at Dusty Roads Park with a noise permit. We did the parade more we had actually had a day party, and then we did the parade 8 p.m.
Yeah. At a logical time for a parade.
Not for that parade. 8 p.m. is not really? Gee whiz, we're not actually, we weren't there to be an 8 p.m. parade.
Yeah.
And it did lose a lot of its fun by doing it that way.
And how many people were there that final year?
Oh, hundreds. I don't actually have a count.
It's insane.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll go with hundreds. And then, so what was it that made you guys get together and say, you know what, I think this should be the final year?
Well, that was it. I mean, we tried it in a new way, and there really wasn't ever a conversation of doing it again in a different way.
Yeah.
We couldn't do it the way that we thought was important to do it that way. And quite frankly, you're asking about the legal risks. Those were increasing while the enjoyment and the fun and the ability to connect with all these people wasn't.
Yeah. It may be that I worked as an insurance agent for several years, and I mean that's why I'm sort of obsessing about the liability issues that's immediately coming to my head.
And I have that reaction myself.
Yeah.
There's a level of trust you have to have around a group of people where if you're going to do something that rambunctious and you're expecting them to stay on the right side of the law, you have to have trust in it. And for us, it did work out extremely well.
Yeah.
I've done many other things. I've been leads on lots of festivals. I've owned music festivals and all that sort of stuff. And the perspective on legal liability is much different.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, with that event, we really weren't in charge. We just said, we're going on parade.
Yeah.
And we'd go on parade.
Yeah.
And everybody else came along with.
Yeah.
We didn't... as much as we thought about what we were doing, we really weren't leading.
Yeah.
We were just...
He's doing the quoties again, by the way. Listeners.
I am. The air quotes are back in
place.
place.
The air quotes are happening. So you said that the burners found you.
Yes, at one of those parties.
At one of these.
I was naked, hanging on hooks.
Of course.
When a bunch of burners came in, like 3 or 4 different groups had found out about us. How, I have no idea to this day.
I mean, at this point, half of OB is burners.
Probably. In fact, I met one of the leads of the AA camp living in OB.
Yeah.
You know, it's like walking down the street. Oh, that guy's getting ready for Ocean Beach or for Burning Man. And started chatting with him. I was like, oh, you're with the AA group out on the playa. Cool.
Beautiful.
Cool.
And by AA, are we saying Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's AA and
AA
NA meetings out there like 24 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was, connected to one of the main camps for that. But yeah, I mean, there's so many burners in San Diego, and we don't know them all at all.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is there's this couple that they've got their first kid now, but when I met them, the only connection they had to Burning Man is they went to Burning Man.
Yeah.
To this day, they still don't do anything like locally.
Yeah.
I think they've been out to like 2 events total in like the 10 years I've known them, but they're burners.
Yeah. Which is so bizarre to me, because I mean, I feel like I started to get withdrawals immediately. I'm like, I want to be around more of this. But yeah, there are, a lot of people that just go that one time a year. Which you do have some of the burnier than thous. Like in LA, they call them fashion burners. But then again, like over in LA, you have a lot more of like the film industry types that, I don't know, they're more for like, they spend a lot of money on the costumes, and then hugging is a little... It's not so warm.
It's funny enough, LA is the same thing as San Diego. There's no coherent burner.
Yeah.
In small cities, you'll have a burner scene. In San Diego, LA, San Francisco, there's actually not a single burner scene.
Yeah.
There's multiple overlapping. Sometimes they don't even know about one another. Even in San Diego, like, could you really point out the goth burners from San Diego?
I don't know. I just look for the fake fur.
Right. The goth burners usually aren't in fake fur. They're usually in black leather.
Do you... I mean, I know you weren't in the scene back then, but were you aware of a burner scene in Rochester?
I've actually caused burners meetup scenes to occur like 2005, 2006. There was all of like 6 people at that. Yeah. There is a small burner scene there nowadays. There's also like a small circus and flow arts, which is one of my other main loves.
Yeah.
They have actually a pretty good, regular arts scene in San Diego, in Rochester at this point.
Yeah. So let's get back here to the burners that found you at the parties. So you guys start communicating.
Yep, they start communicating. This was way in the early days, and it was like...
I'm assuming the subject was just like, hey, you guys are fucking crazy. Let's hang out.
Yeah, pretty much. And this was back in the days of... was it Dr. Random and Swarty and Jonesy, who I believe is working for the org up in San Francisco now, like really, 2002, 2003 time range.
Yeah.
So Mithra, if anybody remembers him. Yeah, all these older burners that are I still see him out and about, sort of thing. One of my first burner parties was Sasquatch's house up in Ocean Beach. They found us. We enjoyed them. We kept doing more interesting things. They kept doing more interesting things. Zara Delzura, if you've ever heard of that. That was a big, coherent connection for a lot of San Diego, Orange County, and LA burners. Yeah. And it just kept growing and growing and growing.
And so at some point you get sucked into the leadership position.
2004, I believe, was my first decom lead.
Okay. Back then it was called, was it Fuego back then?
No, it was just San Diego Decom.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
And I refused to call it Fuego Diego. Yeah. There's so much this weirdness about the name. Now that it's Utopia and it's, people are calling it Utopia, and I'm still like, nah, it's just Decom.
Yeah. Well, I think the argument is that, decom's tend to be, and correct me, you've been around longer, like a day gathering or something, and this is
right,
pretty
but we
much a
called it
regional
decom
festival.
before they bothered to actually differentiate what decoms and regionals are.
Yeah.
Like, it was just decom back then. Like, nobody actually tried to explain it away. It was like, this is the gathering of the burners of this city this year.
Yeah.
Eventually, it becomes, the decom of the 1 days and the regionals of the outdoor camping, whatever. I don't really care. It's a completely unimportant point in my head.
So you're a co-lead on the event? Is that what was happening at that time?
Yeah. Brady was the primary lead. I'm in charge of fire at that time.
Brady was our first guest.
Yeah. Brady is one of the primary people for helping put this community together in a functional way. We owe a lot to him, actually.
Yeah. He's very quiet, lead from behind kind of person. Very
But good at talking people into doing things.
Absolutely. He's very trustworthy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's generally speaking, I mean, that's been my experience with the majority of leads anyway. But yeah, there's something about his like a lack of desire for attention, and he just kind of like, all right, we're just gonna get this shit done.
Yeah, but he's got a damn funny side at the same time.
Absolutely.
One of my favorite memories is playing catapult butt plugs, where I'm like running 200 yards to try and catch one over the shoulder. This was actually at Zaro Del Zura, and he had one of those like 3-person like water balloon slingshots, and we were firing butt plugs.
How many butt plugs did you guys have for this game?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I was 200 yards away. He was firing them. Like, catch a butt plug. I'm sure.
So what were some of so you're here, you're a co-lead on this. How many other co-leads were there at this time?
It wasn't big. It was like 7 or 8.
Okay. And in charge of fire, that means your responsibilities were
overseeing like anybody who was installing fire art, anybody who was going to do fire performance, setting up the fire performance rings, making sure we have some way of putting fires out, watching the fire rings. I basically spent 3 days carrying a fire extinguisher around with me at all times, and I'm not sure if that was the year we had the glass blowing or not, but we've some of those ones that I worked on, we actually had a full glass blowing studio up. A lot of the dance floors actually were using serious propane heaters to keep things warm. One of those or 2 of those in there, I actually do a fire show myself, stuff like that.
So what qualifies one as the fire co-lead? Were you spinning fire prior to the event?
I was.
Okay. What got you into that?
I'm the one who took fire safety serious.
Yeah. Nobody else was.
Well, nobody else knew.
Yeah.
This was a lot of experimentation about what is safe and what isn't safe.
Which, I mean, if you fuck up that experiment, it could go really badly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if anybody's ever heard me, you'll probably have heard me absolutely shit talk tiki torches.
Why is that?
Every fire disaster I've ever seen has a tiki torch mixed into it somehow.
Interesting.
So
you're looking at correlation at this point, or is there something specific about tiki torches that's more dangerous?
They're very dangerous.
Why is that?
So there's a couple things that jump out about tiki torches. One, it's very often tough to get them, especially the bamboo or wood ones. It's very tough to actually get them mounted securely in the ground.
Okay.
So they tend to very often fall over.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing for fire when you have like it falling 4 feet away from where you set it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw a tent get lit on fire at Burning Man from a tiki torch falling over.
God.
The other one that I've seen is in higher wind, again with the bamboo one. The flame got sent sideways, caught the actual basket that holds the candle, and set the whole thing on fire. That burned to the ground and caught like the stuff next to it on fire.
Oh, wow.
I've seen people try and use tiki torches to light a fuel depot. I've seen people set up a tiki torch leaned against a tree. Like... For some reason, tiki torches inspire stupidity, and they don't work very well anyway.
Yeah, I've never thought about this, but you're right. I can't. think of the last time I noticed a tiki torch at a burn event. I mean, I'm certain they're there, but I imagine
rare actually.
Yeah.
And
that's just like a general knowledge that people have cultivated over the years, is that it is specifically tiki torches that are pretty dangerous.
Well, it's not the only thing that can be dangerous with fire, but they are always dangerous.
Yeah. Because you see tiki torches at pretty much any other house party you go to, but not at the burner one so much.
Oh, I hate them so much. I've just seen like 7 or 8 fire disasters, and all of them have a tiki torch in them.
What qualifies as a disaster?
Well, like it falling on a tent, like it's setting on the brush pile when it falls over, when it burns itself to the ground. Those are all fire, like where you have to actually go and do something to take care of the fire. To me, is a fire disaster.
Yeah.
Like, it is going out of control. I must take care of this now. Like, that to me is a fire disaster, no matter what it is. Whether it's like...
So it jumps all the way from... I mean, it seems kind of 0 to 60. Shouldn't there be like lower level, something below disaster? Let's say if it's just somebody's tent. I mean, maybe the tent is empty. And then you put that out and...
You can't react that way.
Yeah.
Fire is fire. Go. It always must be reacted to like it's dangerous.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And that's... part of why I was picked as the fire lead is my reaction to fire is it must be taken care of now, not later.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen some what people would look at as incredibly dangerous structures and gone, that's fire being perfectly run.
Yeah.
You know, like I've been out at a completely unrelated festival, and there was a group doing a bonfire structured fire, and this thing had a 10-foot tall column of pure fire, and it was in the middle of, you know, woods here in the hills of San Diego, but it was the utterly most safe fire I've ever seen. They were using such well-seasoned wood that they just, no embers, no nothing, just pure fire, and no danger to anything near it.
So the kind of wood that you use is important.
Oh yeah, like if you use wet wood and it starts kicking off sparks and everything like that. In San Diego, you're supposed to use spark arresters everywhere.
Yeah. Spark arresters?
So have you ever like grill or grate over top of fires? So like around here, most fire pits, you have like the little like chain link or mesh. That's a spark arrestor, is that mesh. Okay. What it does is when the spark kicks off, it'll 9 times out of 10 hit that bar and get knocked down.
Yeah.
So instead of getting caught and blowing up.
So is there anything that you still see as far as dangerous fire standards, or do you think like at the time that you guys were developing DCOM, these things just kind of got nipped in the bud pretty early?
They got nipped in the bud pretty early. I haven't seen anywhere near the depth of danger once people started talking to one another about what they'd seen and what things had worked and what things hadn't. You know, like you were saying, you don't really see a tiki torch out and about. Well, most of the time, anybody who's involved with fire is going to say, no, don't bring that tiki torch anywhere near here. And that doesn't matter where you are up and down the coast. You know, the fire spinning knowledge has gone up tremendously. I mean, when I basically started here in San Diego, there was maybe 8 of us who spun fire. I've probably taught 800 people how to spin fire at some point or not. I actually don't tend to teach people fire. I force them off on other people at this point. Teaching people how to spin and all this in a safe way. Well, it's not even minions. After a while, I was burned out on teaching...
No pun intended.
No pun intended. Okay, maybe a little bit. But I was really not interested in teaching more people how to do fire personally. And not from a selfless reason other than to say... I don't want to have to ensure you're not an idiot. Whereas
it's kind of an interesting thing because like with in our community with the amount of fire that you see at pretty much every event, you keep feeling like you should be seeing more injuries or fuck ups.
Nah.
And somehow
the base level of safety is there nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, like, for example, one of the best examples I can give you is within the fire spinning community, they're down to 2 fuels. White gas, if you're actually using it on a tool, or lamp oil if you plan on using it on your skin or in your mouth.
Yeah.
The days of using lighter fluid, for example, are so gone, it's not even funny. because, the sheer depth of knowledge, people have actually looked into what the fuels are, what the byproducts of the fuels are like. So I can feel confident if I'm going to be doing fire breathing that I'm taking the smallest amount of poison I can possibly take into myself to accomplish this effect.
Sure. Minimum effective dose.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Or the white gas with the tools, because we've all kind of standardized on one fuel. We know it burns very, very clean. We know it burns approximately this temperature. We know duvetains, like when I started out, the wet towel was the most common thing you had. It works, but duvetain is better, sort of thing. Like, so a lot of the floor of knowledge kept getting up and up over the course of like 3 or 4 years. And after that, like, how do you set up a propane art piece? You get this tank, this fitting, this fitting, this fitting, this fitting, this fitting. Put it anywhere you want, but that's what you use. Yeah. And once you got to that point, you didn't have so many bad homemade solutions. You had one good one. You could go to Home Depot and just get the parts.
Yeah.
So, like in that respect, the floor of safety is vastly better nowadays, and I wouldn't expect it to drop anytime soon.
burnerpodcast.com.
All right. So here's our quick little break that we always take somewhere mid-show. Events, cool events coming up, things you should check out. Bequinox, which is the Los Angeles Regional Burn that's held at Joshua Tree. That's coming up on March 19th. It's from the 19th through the 22nd. You can get more information about it at laburningman.com. So there's that website. Also in March, there is the Burn on the Bay. It's an event held by the Yellowknife Regionals in Canada. That's on March 28th at 8 p.m. If you want more information about that one, you're going to have to send an email to yellowknife@burningman.org. And also coming up in April, I know we announced this last time, but just wanted to announce it again. April 23rd through the 27th is Electric Poncho in Canyon de Guadalupe. That's in Baja, California. I happen to have it on good authority that they've sold out of Tier 1 tickets already, so that's pretty awesome. And for more info, you can check out electricponcho.com. And in the next few days, they should have the trailer, the video uploaded, which was shot and produced by yours truly. So there's some cool events coming up. We're just going to go ahead and take it back to the interview. Here's Taz.
Welcome home.
And over the years, did you stay as the fire lead on the DCOMs in general?
So I took more fire/safety. I was lead for about 3 years directly on DCOM. Mm-hmm. And then, I went on to other events, but that was the main thing I was doing specifically for them. But at that time, the leadership team or the people actually directly involved were so small that it was really like, hey, can you do this? Sure, I got it right now.
Yeah.
So it was really, I had the main goal of fire safety, and then I would do whatever else anybody needed. And that applied to other events that I did as well. Eventually, like with some of the other events, I was in charge of parking, fire, security, medical, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. Was fire still your favorite?
No. I was so happy when I actually got to have somebody else be the fire lead for an event that I was running.
Yeah.
Eventually I just became pure production lead on some events. In which case I didn't have the time, effort, or energy to be yet the fire lead as well.
Sure.
So the correct response there was, I need somebody who can be dedicated to this to maintain the safety. Are you willing to do it? You have the knowledge. I have the trust in you. Okay, you do it.
Yeah.
But the fire lead, the medical lead, the security lead, the parking lead were all reporting to me for dealing with all that stuff.
And this is all, by the way, happening side by side with the parade still. Like, you're involved in the burn community, you're doing this stuff, and then the parade is still happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
there's also a chunk of time in there that I was running the Monday evening flow class in Ocean Beach for 5 years. Where I taught any and all comers how to spin flow toys of any and all sorts.
Yeah.
I was also learning how to become a performer and a circus performer and all that type of stuff at the same time.
Did you have a moment or a time where it suddenly dawned on you how rapidly the community in San Diego is growing, or was it a gradual experience?
Well, I said before, San Diego has this immense amount of burners that you never know.
Yeah.
And I was lucky in the time frame I was in that you could watch a bunch of groups like my friend groups sort of cohere together. And we'd have a couple, members who would be wrapped up in other groups, and it was, I could actually watch sort of this accretion of groupings rather than the burners.
Yeah.
Like there's these awesome The Black Company, if you've ever encountered Captain Storm and his entire troop of mercenaries. And
There was a moment at Utopia. I had a friend of mine there, Nav, who that was his first event that he'd come out to. And he'd been out to the burn, but at one point he's just kind of standing there. He's like, it just dawned on me that we are in a camp where it is designed for them to look very threatening, but they are the nicest people that you've ever met.
They do carry large weapons that actually work. And you're not the one in armor.
Yeah, they make you fight over quesadillas.
Yeah, I have yet to get to participate in that, and it's killing me.
I kept walking by afterwards, and they played just like the weirdest music in there.
Battle Royale with cheese, I think it was. Yeah. I've definitely been wanting to go to that, and I've failed to for the past 2 years.
It's a beautiful camp. I mean, I love that the main table that they have looks like a full-on feast. It's a good time.
I've feasted on that table.
Yeah.
And the 2-piece wood chairs with the super recline on them. Those things are fun too.
Yeah.
The ones you straddle.
I wasn't entirely coherent at the moment that I was hanging out at that camp, but I remember it being a good time. I'm just gonna go ahead and leave it at that. So you're climbing up as far as like production, and little by little, I'm imagining basically what's happening is everybody who was taking on smaller parts in the earlier days is having to kind of, for lack of a better description, get promoted.
Or kicked upstairs.
Sure. Yeah. The opposite of, a different framing of how to get promoted. Sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, you can actually watch, like nowadays, there are people who are growing into being festival producers.
No, it is it is an over full-time job. I mean, I'm watching people working on these and it's mind-blowing.
Yeah. And at the time, there wasn't that.
Yeah.
So there was a sort of, again, even within, I was describing before, the process of learning about fire, the same thing happened with festivals. You started watching the floor of how a festival gets produced, going up and up and up. And some things worked really well, some things didn't. Some festivals are still going, some fell down for whatever reason. But you could watch that, each year there was another level of professionalism, of safety, of all that sort of thing coming in. So you kind of have to go up if you want to make anything bigger, sort of idea.
Did you go out and get any experience with festivals in other regions?
Not in other regions. I've worked on like 6 different festivals here in Southern California area. Over the course of the years. So yeah, I mean, I was working full time, so I wasn't going to find more places to have, or more time to go somewhere else to do it.
Yeah.
Like festival production, if you're producing a festival at a big enough level, is many months worth of hard work prior to it.
Yeah.
So there's only so many of those I could do in a given year and still be able to like have a day job.
Yeah. And so speaking of the day job, you're at UCSD. And so at this time you were at UCSD as well? Okay. And so high level tech, can you kind of explain what that means? Like what it is that you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
So
not necessarily daily duties, but generally what's the mission?
So at this point I can design, install, run a large-scale IT infrastructure for projects.
Okay.
The current project has a worldwide population of like 50,000 people or 50,000 kids in like 5,000 schools worldwide.
Now, hold on, when we're talking about kids, how old are we talking about?
So the project is aimed at middle school students. However, there is no hard limit on what age they can be, so they tend to range anywhere from about second, third grade all the way up to end of high school.
And what is UCSD's involvement in working with kids? It's just a project that's run out of there?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's actually NASA pays for this project.
Okay.
And we're located at UCSD because, well, mostly historical. The person who started the project was a faculty member at UCSD, Sally Ride, the first U.S. female astronaut.
Yeah.
She was a faculty member at UCSD, and this is where it got based out of. And it's been going since the mid-90s. And the last iteration was over the past 5 years. We've basically replaced all the tech. My job was to, here's the current tech of 1996. Now replace this with something new.
So what is the mission of the project?
So the project is called Celluride EarthCam, Earth KAM, knowledge acquired by middle school students. We have a camera system up on the International Space Station that we connect to those middle school students around the world. They've been through a teacher or something like that. They register with our website, and then about once every 2 to 3 months, we go live for a week. During that week, we basically tell the students, over the course of the week, here is where the space station is going to be, and they can see the ground track maps of where the space station will be, like on Thursday. And they basically can say, I want to take a photo here. And we do all the process of taking that request, putting it through our software, getting it up to the spacecraft, taking the photo and getting the picture back down through our software again and back to the students.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So we take about 4,000 to 5,000 photos during that week. And hopefully that gets kids interested in STEM.
Yeah.
The science behind it is that middle school students are still in the time frame that they are in love with science. Science is usually kids' most favorite subject through middle school, and then lo and behold, puberty hits, and suddenly nobody likes science anymore.
Yeah.
But
because girls show up.
Well,
or boys, depending.
We'll just leave it at puberty.
Yeah.
However, the science is pretty good, and it says that if you can get somebody emotionally connected in a big way to science before puberty, it carries them through that peer pressure against and into a place where they can follow on to STEM careers.
Yeah. Well, it's a there's been so many stories now. I mean, NPR did this whole series for a couple of weeks about how difficult it is today for scientists to get funding for research. I mean, NASA has gotten plenty of their budget cuts. It's like what is the feeling on this situation? I mean, is the idea just to continue pushing forward? Are there?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Right now, I think science is actively under attack by an entire group of people who are anti-science.
Exactly.
And
the funding isn't anywhere near where it used to be. I think in ratio, from my understanding of what's happening. So you're getting more and more kids that are interested in sciences, but then when they get up to the age to actually work in it, like this story, for example, on NPR had stories about people who had really brilliant studies that they were working on, but they couldn't get the funding for it. So the guy ends up like working at Walgreens. I mean, that's an extreme situation, but
there is some of people who think about the anti-science wing and their view on tenured professors, and that's just not what is representative of what being a working scientist is. Going into science is tough. Certain sciences are much, much easier to get jobs outside of academia with. Yeah. And we still need a lot of those jobs as well. Like, most of the people who are working for NASA are not in academia at all. Most people working for Lockheed Martin, they have a shit ton of brilliant PhDs. They're not working in academia. I can remember a problem I had with another project where it required a PhD studying the he was a PhD in EE of all things.
EE?
Electrical engineering.
Okay.
And he literally found the problem by watching what happened in the first, like, 0.8 of a millisecond in an electrical system.
Okay.
Like, he had an equivalent model of what we had up in space, and he pulled the whole thing apart, and, you know, I saw the photo of it. I was like, I can't believe this guy just did that. Like, I can't believe he was able to examine the details of a computer system down to the point where he could find the problem at a physics level, not at a coding level.
Yeah.
And it was really remarkable listening to this guy, you know, go through his paces on what had happened, how it had happened, what could be done to ameliorate it. It was fascinating. You know, here I am, a computer person, like, but don't ask me to even, like, write code.
Yeah.
And this guy here is like the person who makes the, you know, the CPUs work.
Yeah.
Or designs a CPU that will allow this current CPU to work. Yeah, the guy was utterly brilliant.
I imagine you're interacting with people with these, like, super brains on a regular basis.
I have certainly been blessed to work with some amazingly smart people. Even one of my interns, I consider to be one of the most brilliant people I've ever worked with, and that guy is now working for Skybox, who's the taking HD video from space. Like, I've worked with some really, really brilliant students as well as engineers and PhDs and things like that.
Do you think there's something different about that level of genius? Like, I don't know, even like on a genetic level? Or do you think that a lot of them was more nature? They had this experience at a younger age and they fell in love and they just chased it?
Well, that'd be nurture.
Sure, yeah.
Well, nature is usually considered the genetic component, and nurture is the what things you do to it. We don't have, you know, the answer lies somewhere in between. You know, smarter people tend to have smarter genes. There are also a crap ton of things that we absolutely can point to at a statistical level, like poverty, most likely going to reduce your ability, your IQ, several IQ different tests, you know, by about 10 points.
Yeah.
So, you know, to a certain extent, a person who's poor and a genius has already overcome, like, a handicap in order to get to that.
Yeah.
But the more, you know, genius itself is able to be found anywhere. And many different sorts of geniuses, you know, like, I've known musical geniuses, I know computer geniuses, I know visual artist geniuses, I know performance geniuses, yada, yada, yada. So, like, genius comes from a whole lot of different places. What they almost all have is a drive to work.
Yeah.
Like, people want to do this, so they do this.
Yeah. Like an absolute curiosity. And that's, for me, that's what I've loved about this community is that, and in fact, a lot of why I even started this podcast, because it's pretty rare for me to meet somebody who doesn't have some seriously fascinating shit to say. Like, everybody's working towards something. Everybody has some sort of a crazy ass thing that they're working on. And it's so diverse. I wonder, like, is that, you've been in the community for such a long time. Like, I wonder, like, when you do spend time outside of the community, like, for example, at work, do you sense, like, a difference in the level of conversation that's happening? Or is it all just kind of blending for you?
I do tend to think Muggle and Burner. There is a certain amount of the fact that I'm not one of the proselytizers. I don't care if you ever find out about Burning Man.
Absolutely.
The flip side is I've had some people I would never have met in my day-to-day life suddenly pop out in front of me in, like, the Burning Man community, and I'd be like, okay, you're not the person I expected to ever see here. And now I'm going to give you a hug because this would never happen in the, like, day job world. But here you go. I've also had some of the most bizarre little moments. Like, for example, a friend of mine who's post-op and had been talking about her high school experience, and my aunt, who was a high school teacher for 50 years, had this moment of connection through my Facebook page or tribe page about, you know, this experience, and it was just this amazing moment of, like, that's my aunt.
Yeah.
That's my Burning Man friend, and they just had this amazing connection. I doubt my aunt will ever go to Burning Man, but she's definitely like actively looked into what it is and has a respect for it that, I wasn't expecting to ever find.
Yeah. What is the common thread that you see amongst the burners? What is it, do you think, that after all these years of discovering the community inside and from the outside, like what is it that makes somebody say, I'm going to go do that?
There is an encouragement to creativity. That creation doesn't require being somebody special to do it. I can remember one of those mind-boggling moments on my first visit to the playa, like the first day on the playa, and I'm helping put together. It was like the kitchen for a 500-person village.
What year was this?
2004.
Okay.
I'd never met the guy who was in charge of the kitchen. I'd never heard any of these people talk. I had never, all I was doing was, oh, you need hands? Okay. There was a moment when I realized, his building structure had all stopped into my brain. I know how to put this together.
Yeah.
And this guy leading this, it was like a 20-person kitchen feeding 500 people. Here's me starting to correct people as we're putting together this PVC shade structure. And he goes, do you understand this? Yeah, pretty sure I got what's supposed to happen here. Fine, do it. And he walked away from me in that moment of, okay, well, I got 25 people here. I have to figuring out how to make this happen right now. I think I'm pretty sure and I literally had to create the control process, get these people in order, have teams of 3 on either side working together so that they wouldn't be self-defeating. And it was just this encouragement to creation. You know how to put this together. Even if you don't know how to put this together, go and do it.
Yeah.
And I kept watching that happen over and over and over in so many different ways. Oh, I have this idea. Go and do it.
Yeah. When you found the community, was it more like, here you people are finally, or did it just feel like the next natural transition in your journey?
Well, again, I was lucky to have a group of 12 of us.
Yeah.
Who were already pushing one another into this creation. And what it felt like is we got more resources, more ways to learn, more ways to create, more people to learn different things from.
Yeah.
One of the guys back then, he had his RV hooked up so that he had a little remote control so he could stand on top with a little box and drive his RV without ever having to be inside the vehicle.
Yeah.
And it was like, can I learn any of that?
Yeah. Please?
And I never did, actually. I'm not good with electronics like that. But it was definitely we were pushing one another to learn sort of the hard way. And
that's part of the experience that happens out there, right? I mean, you're in an environment that is just trying to kill you every second that you're there. It just wants you gone. Every other living creature left. We're the only crazy fuckers that went back in there.
Yeah, I can't even feel that way about the play anymore. I've had that group of friends have actually made the cat that was so incredibly comfortable on the playa. Giant, the 60-mile-an-hour wind came in.
Yeah.
I'm doing the bowl-eating soup
bowl
move.
Eating soup, yeah. Pantomiming eating. Yeah.
It was just, okay, this isn't kind of let me put on my goggles.
Yeah.
And just kept going. One of my utter favorite moments on the playa is getting to the edge of not Deep Space. What the hell is
Playa?
No. It's the dance camp that holds all the daytime parties on the 9 o'clock side.
Apex. God, I don't remember. That's okay.
So, anyway, I get to this.
Somebody tweet us.
Yeah, somebody tweet us. I get to this thing and you can see the wall of dust approaching, and just as we get to the edge of the dance floor, and we just look at one another. Goggles, mask, dance. I don't even think of the I know that the playa is dangerous. But to me, when I'm there, I'm already in my comfort zone. So to me, it's just another place to be.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it, is being in that. Those dust storms are fantastic. Seeing the double rainbows 2 different years. The the mud, the sun, I feel comfortable.
What is it? Do you think that, well, I mean, if you can reach back to you were comfortable from the beginning, it sounds like, but...
Oh, no, they broke me on the playa the first year.
Tell me about the breaking.
So, like, that whole experience started with, like, loading the truck. We're going out there. Like, 3 or 4 friends had gone the year before, and they're like, we're all going next year. Great. We're joined in on this giant village. I'm doing my logistics stuff because that's what I tend to do with big groups is logistics for people. And I remember putting a knife through my finger, my left index finger, like all the way down to the bone. I got stitched up at my kitchen table. I put my glove back on, and I kept loading for like the next 6 hours. I drove all the way up to the playa over the next like 14 hours with my glove still on and the bandage and the stitch. I get there, I set up my entire camp. I set up this village thing and blah, blah, blah. Like basically like 30 straight hours worth of being awake and doing nothing but work. Yeah. Maybe some sleeping on the way up. And I finally go to the medical tent. I had one of the stupidest choices I've ever had on the playa coming back. Finally get clean. Doctor's all happy with it. The stitching worked. And I'm coming back and I see like these people painting people head to toe. Like they're naked, spray them down with paint, go. Like, this looks like fun. So I'm sitting there waiting. I get painted head to toe blue with little green dots. And, you know, I'm headed back to camp, and I'm actually going through a lot of the San Diego camps. The hell was the name of that village back then? Anyway, but like there was the carcass wash and stuff like this. And I'm, you know, woohoo, I'm naked and I'm blue. Ha-ha, I'm naked and I'm blue. Hey, everybody, I'm naked and I'm blue. So I get back to my camp, and at this point it's like noon. And I discover the one problem with having gotten painted. I can't touch anything. If I touch it, it turns blue. Yeah. So I can't sit on any of our stuff. I can't, like, lean on anything. I can't hug a friend. I can't do anything other than be blue and turn everything else blue. Yeah. And stupid old me thinks, well, all I have to do is stop sweating.
Okay. This is a decision you can make.
This is the decision I decide to make. Okay. So I stopped drinking water.
on the play, okay.
At noon.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And, you know, all I'm trying to do is, if this stuff will just dry, it'll adhere, and I'm good. Yeah. And like 3 or 4 hours later, I have no idea what my friend said, but all I can remember is just like having this like, well, fine. Turn around and like stomp away. And then pass out into the dirt. It's just like splat into the mud.
This is the part that I should probably clarify for the listeners, that when producer Meg was booking Taz for the show, she said that he is a big bag of brains. And it looks like you just told us a story to completely throw that diagnosis out the window.
I can't say it was my smartest moment. I had worse that week. Anyway, like, I get my friends to pick me up. We actually go back to the carcass wash where they'd already closed down, but a couple of people still around. Hey, Touch. Yeah. Were kind enough to specifically clean me off from the blues so I could actually, like, return to participating in Burning Man in one shape or another. The real kicker, so, you know, never paint yourself on the playa. But the real kicker for me was in how bad a mistake that whole choice was. Is come December, I'm cleaning out my ears with a Q-tip.
There's still blue in there.
It was the last blue to finally come off was December. Like, I just was so pissed off that I had painted myself blue. Don't paint yourself on the playa. Yeah. Like, face, sure, you can wipe that off easy. Your whole body, no.
Yeah. That is actually incredibly good advice, because I'm absolutely certain that I would have probably jumped into that too. But now, having heard the story, I know that I will absolutely not be doing that.
It was the worst choice of my life. No, not quite.
You made worse decisions.
Well, one of the other times they broke me on the playa. So, of course, I go to the playa and I'm totally unprepared for how cold it actually is overnight. Yeah. And, you know, it's down to like low 40s, high 30s sort of thing. And I'm like in, you know, a sport coat. Yeah. just freezing cold. I'd had like the end of the night. I'd had things didn't go quite my way with a woman, and I was all kind of like butthurt that everybody else was like cuddled up with their partner, and I'm like, I'm from Rochester. We embrace the cold. I'm not afraid of the cold. Now you have to realize this is like when the sky is starting to get light. Dawn's coming sort of time frame. And I decide that I'm going to strip naked and walk straight towards the sunrise.
Okay. A lot of your stories seem to revolve around that, by the way.
Sunrise?
No, naked.
Well, I didn't talk about the hooks that much. But no, I literally, like, we're right near the man. I strip naked. I start walking towards the sun, or where the sun will be. Mm-hmm. And it was just cold. And
it gets the coldest right before sunrise.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And I had managed to walk so far away from my friends that I had done like the whole disappear into like the distance sort of thing. So like it couldn't actually see me. And I can remember that moment, like my feet are hurting. I'm just really like, I'm into the frostbite phase where like your hands and feet really are painful, things like this. And I'm like, finally my brain goes, you're going to get out to the trash fence. Yeah. And you and your pale ass, Irish ass motherfucking body are going to have a 20-minute walk back to your clothes.
Oh, God.
At which point you're going to be sunburnt.
Okay.
At which point I just like, fucking turn around and walk back, grab my clothes. I'm just going home.
All to get revenge against the universe for not getting laid.
I wasn't even getting laid. It was like curl up with somebody. Like, it wasn't even about the sex at that point. It was just like closeness sort of thing. But yeah, it was a whole.
Yeah, I've used that line before too. All right. So we've teased them long enough. Let's talk about the crater in the moon. What is the deal with that?
Crater in the moon. In 2012, we ran a project called Moon Camp. Moon knowledge acquired by middle school students. The rocket had launched in September of 2011.
Okay.
The spacecraft arrived to the moon roughly about January 1st. And then March 12th, they were finally in position, and we started taking photos of the moon. Okay. I took 110,000 photos of the moon from March 2012 to December 2012.
So this is still that. So the students put in the request of which photo to take, and then you're executing it?
Yep.
Okay.
We gave those ones to them in like 2-week blocks.
Okay.
And they'd be able to look at for a chunk of 2 weeks. Where do you want to be? Mm-hmm. My personal goal, which we didn't quite reach, was to take a photo every place on the moon. If I had been able to design that in the way I wanted to, we would have. Okay. Anyway, we covered something like 96% of the moon in photos.
Okay. 96% is not bad. I'm just gonna say
this is the real funny part about it is the project is going on not for us. Okay. We are spare payload capacity on the rocket, and the process was bid to be the first dedicated education project within that payload capacity.
So the rocket's doing other things while it's up there.
The spacecraft are doing other things.
Okay.
The rocket just gets them into the space.
Gotcha.
The spacecraft are called Ebb and Flow, Grail A and Grail B, and it's Gravity, Recovery, and Interior Laboratory. They were actually making a gravity map of the moon. That's what the main science was, to put everything there.
You guys kind of hitched a ride, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they gave us, we had to go through this, like what camera we're going to use, and it was 4 cameras on each of the 2 spacecraft. One of which we didn't end up using because we got too much ground blur. But we had a forward pointing, a backward pointing, and a downward facing pointing. And we, as I said, we took 110,000 photos of the moon in that year, and that was, oh my God, one stressful year.
Yeah.
And then, so by the time we did our first phase, which ended in June, then we lowered the spacecraft considerably, and they ran a second whole phase from September till December, trying to make an even more accurate map.
So do you somebody else is controlling this spacecraft?
Yeah.
Okay, but
NASA.
you like yes, NASA. Okay, sure.
There's this whole organization called NASA that runs these things.
So are you putting your request to them to understand the logistics of how that works?
We'd actually written the software that runs the cameras on the spacecraft.
Okay.
It was operating within the overall spacecraft computer structure. So they basically, here's the camera system, here's this little computer area that we have access to, here are the commands that we can run in their computer. And we actually recorded far more data than the main science project was, just because we took photos.
Yeah.
So most of the bandwidth went to us.
Yeah. So if you want the spacecraft to move lower, though, you were saying that it got closer to the moon surface?
So, the orbit had been structured. It was what's called a polar orbit. So they basically went from North Pole to South Pole and back and forth. And then the moon would rotate underneath that, and you'd eventually cover the entire globe.
Yeah.
The spacecraft themselves were being commanded by Johnson Space Center. And they would figure out, there was regular points where they'd be like, okay, we're going to be firing the rockets for 6 seconds, pointed at this vector to do this with the orbit.
Yeah.
And then when there was that gap, they actually spent a whole lot of time lowering the overall orbit considerably. Okay. To the point where, and this gets back to where you started from, the craters. Once the spacecraft were at their lowest point, there was no longer enough fuel on board to get them back out of the gravity well.
Now, was that planned?
Well, yes.
Okay.
You have to figure out what you're going to do with a spacecraft nowadays. You can't just sort of go,
this is interesting. I mean, it's okay. So
when they started,
that's usually part of the plan. Then you send out a spacecraft, and the disposal of said spacecraft is a part of the original plan before you even launch that fucker into space.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So, for example, there was Plan A and Plan B. Okay. Plan A was the mission was going to end in June, and I forget what the ending was for that. But there was actually if we do Plan A, this is how we will deal with the spacecraft afterwards.
Okay.
And then there was Plan B, because we'd done the first part so successfully, we had enough fuel left over to do this really complex maneuver in order to make the orbit lower. Yeah. And when they ran through all the math, they said, you know what, we can actually get basically map version 2 with the altitude being like 25% of the original orbit. So the resolution gets much, much better. Okay. But again, Plan B came along. They approved Plan B. Plan B always had as part of it, we will decommission it by putting them down on the space onto the surface of the moon. Okay. And that's really the words they use, is decommissioning the spacecraft, aka crashing him into the moon.
It sounds like throwing out a massive cigarette butt.
So there was the calculation was there was a 1 in 14 million chance we'd accidentally hit something else on the moon, like the Apollo landing sites or the Russian landing sites, so there was like this really tiny chance
that there could be an international incident,
that we'd hit something that is truly remarkable, like when man first stepped onto the moon.
Yeah. 1 in 14 is not...
No, 1 in 14 million.
Okay, I'm sorry. I missed the million part.
Yeah. Okay. Very infinitesimal, but it still existed.
So you were fine.
So the order basically was, thou shalt find some place to smash this into such that there is zero risk to other sites. Yeah. So they went through this. Actually, part of what the pictures that we took that they ended up using was to go find what mountain or ridge line they were going to try and use, and they actually requested it. We want you to take photos of like half dozen locations around the moon so we can examine them for possible landing sites.
And can I ask, by the way, how big is this team that's operating the spacecraft that you're communicating and working with?
I can't even tell you. My part in the MoonCam phase was there was 32 interns I was directly working or running. There was me, there was 3 people at Lockheed Martin, there was 2 people at JPL, and 2 people at Johnson Space Center. That was just for my team. Yeah. The other science team, the other spacecraft operators, the team at MIT, this process was actually run by a woman at MIT named Maria Zuber. I couldn't. There's a company called Sally Ride Science, and there was 8 people from them.
And who? So you're communicating directly with Johnson Space Center?
I basically had a online communication with them. Yeah. I didn't have I rarely had to pick up a phone to call them.
Sure. Yeah.
We did participate in quite a lot of huge conference calls based around, things that happened and emergencies that happened. Yeah. And we actually did have a very serious issue with the spacecraft because of a solar flare. every time people talk about, bad solar flares and how they just missed the Earth, one of those hit our spacecraft.
And it kept going.
Yeah, it was touch and go there for a while, though. Wow. Remember that doctor of our PhD of EE?
Yeah.
He's the one who helped us get the spacecraft back into a working shape so we could go on.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally what the hell just happened to our spacecraft? And a X-class solar radiation storm had hit us.
So you're going through it. It's going through as planned, and then all of a sudden the alarms go off, and it turns out that a solar flare hit it.
Oh yeah, they hit us 3 times. That was the worst of the one.
Yeah.
I don't even know what I can officially say, but functionally there was a chunk of one of the spacecraft that ended up being burned out, including our stuff. Amazing. It was really I can't even tell you the whole explanation, but suffice to say, when there's a switch that says off, you expect it to be off.
Yeah.
And when an X-class solar radiation storm hits, that switch may in fact get kicked on.
Wow.
I don't know how much background you have in that sort of thing, but
me personally,
yeah,
none.
So,
I'm trying to ask the questions that the listeners.
So an electrical switch, like what is on your light switch here, it basically creates a gap when it's off.
Okay.
And if you pump enough electricity, you can jump that gap.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why when you see a electrical substation with all those big pieces of equipment in there, within those substations are really big switches where the gaps are really big because the power going through these cables is really big.
Yeah.
One of these switches would never work for, the electrical cable coming off of a power generator.
Yeah.
Or, a nuclear power plant or something like that. So the solar storm was big enough, in fact, to jump our switch and turn it back on.
Okay.
While all the systems on board say, by the way, this is off.
Yeah.
And it was only a thermal sensor, a thermometer popped at some ridiculous amount just before solder started melting, sort of thing.
Is this a natural phenomenon that reaches the moon often, or was it a rare situation?
X-class solar storms are very, very big. They're kind of like a 8 or a 9 Richter earthquake.
Yeah.
They happen on a statistically predictable rate, but you never know when one's going to hit. And they're big enough that they can affect a whole lot of stuff we rely on the Earth. Like if it hits the Earth directly, all those, GPS satellites would probably be negatively affected pretty bad.
Yeah. And forgive my ignorance. So but Earth's atmosphere does protect us from
Earth's radiation,
to some extent.
Earth's magnetic belts protect us.
Okay.
Even then, in high latitudes, and you ever hear of the Northern Lights?
Yes. That's
charged particles hitting the Earth's atmosphere and interacting with the magnetic field.
Okay.
And the reason why you can see them is because if you look sort of a cross section of a magnet, you have a North Pole and a South Pole, and they make these circular lines or curved lines that connect the two, right? But right at the poles themselves, you can actually get pretty close to the surface before you hit that line.
Yeah.
So when a radiation crosses the South Pole, also gets to the Southern Lights. There's the Northern Lights and the Southern Lights, and that's all the radiation getting in close to the Earth.
Yeah.
With the next class one, that where it could hit, you'd probably be able to see, Northern Lights by us here in San Diego.
Wow.
And
God,
again,
I have to tell you, the ocean fucking terrifies me. That's even scarier, what you're describing.
Well,
being lost
that
in
wouldn't
space.
kill you.
Yeah.
But, all of your radio communication would go out. There'd be a chance that your computer would just burn the hell out. All these electronics are highly susceptible to solar storms.
Yeah. It's almost like a electromagnetic pulse.
It is an EMP pulse. Electromagnetic radiation is what all EM radiation is, and that's what a solar flare throws out.
Fast. Wow. Okay.
Well, and more like X-ray. The same thing where you photograph, your broken bone with X-rays. It's thrown out a lot of that. Neutrinos, all of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get back to the crashing then.
All right. So
you're done.
We're done with the project. These things have to be decommissioned onto the ground. We found a ridge line. Unfortunately, Dr. Sally Ride had actually passed away while the mission was running. And they basically named a ridge after her.
Yeah.
Calculated the flight paths and said, this is where we're going to set them down. And we proceeded to smack two 600-pound washing machine sized spacecraft dead into the ridge.
Wow.
We eventually got photos, and it's like 7 pixels, but you can see it. Yeah. That's the important part. That crater's mine. But yeah, we crashed them into the moon and created a couple craters, and you can see the crater and a debris field. I'm very proud of that fact. In fact,
yeah, that is. So you were done with the photographing at this point, though, correct?
We'd actually only finished about 2 weeks prior.
Okay, so you couldn't take a last photo as you're.
That was actually one of the open questions going into the end.
Yeah.
They weren't 100% sure until 3 days before what the orientation was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not we'd have any of the other... So it actually hit on the far side of the moon from where we were. But we didn't know if we would have line of sight to one of the communications. And those antennas, in order to see the photos, would have actually had to been pointed at something with a parabolic dish. And if you can't get something to receive it within the little cone from that dish, you wouldn't be able to get the transmission.
Okay.
So you needed to have both that as well as the cameras pointed at the ground as it's going in, and it couldn't happen.
Yeah.
We wanted to, but we couldn't pull it off.
Now, okay, so now my next thought is I don't know how long it's been happening, but I guess we are sort of in that place in human history where people are starting to divvy up the moon to some extent.
The entire solar system outside the Earth is under probably the only true international treaty. Nobody may own anything.
Nobody can own it. Okay.
Right.
So what's happening with Virgin? They're planning on doing, a resort up there.
So they do a resort up there. If they build it, I would assume they'll be able to run it, but they won't be able to claim ownership of anything other than what they built.
Yeah. So you still have to reach it first.
Oh,
As of now, nobody owns the moon. You can crash whatever the fuck you want, wherever you want.
Well, yeah, I guess. There's not been enough there that's ever really mattered.
Yeah.
I mean, missions to the moon are really been, I think there's 20, 28, something like that. So it's not like there isn't enough places to crash without affecting other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's actually really...
1 in 40, what was it? 49 million?
1 in 14 million.
14 million, okay.
There's actually an excellent project called LRO, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, that's taking fantastic photos of the moon right now. They're the ones who actually got the photo of our crater.
Yeah. That was 7 pixels.
That was 7 pixels. Which is amazing because it's a 20 megapixel camera on the thing. That gives you an idea of its regular height is fairly high compared to what we were taking them at. Yeah. In fact, we have a video of the LRO going below us in our first phase, and then they have video of us going below them in the second phase.
Lord. This is so... You go to sleep at night with the knowledge that this is the level that you're playing at. This is your day job.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about how weird that is? That you're out there, you're working out there so far out of what most people's realm of possibility is. I mean, most of us are just getting to work on a daily basis and sitting through rush hour, and your playground is out there.
It's really remarkable, but it has taken its own toll. That 2008 to 2012 time frame was very tough. I mean, by the end, I was working between 70 and 100 hours a week in, week out, for more than 3 years.
Yeah.
So to a certain extent, it was amazing. I don't want to make that moon project happen again.
Yeah.
I do not have that reservoir of energy.
I mean, I don't even know there's enough multisyllabic words to bring attention to the level of work that your extended team, the people that you're working with, the remarkable contribution that they're making to the history of humanity. And yet a lot of it is, as you're describing, it's still you're going to work. You're physically there, you're typing on a computer, you got to get on a conference call.
Yeah.
and I don't know. It's pretty mind blowing that it is just, a lot of the time it might be a guy that you're hanging out with this weekend at some party that is in no small way contributing to the advancement of mankind.
Well, absolutely, and the entire high-tech revolution, Burning Man's been there. I mean, the first Burning Man is the first Google Doodle in 1994 or whatever it was. Like,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the very first Google Doodle is because the entire office went to Burning Man.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. They were building Google, one of the most amazing tech companies ever. The number of people in the Burning Man community who are incredibly intelligent, incredibly smart, incredibly trained in something or other is remarkable. That...
And it's the creativity you were saying that attracts them. You get out there and you're forced to be creative.
It's this weird place where you have all the socioeconomic groups meet. Mm-hmm. You have every possible level of intelligence, drive, creativity. And you're all mixing it together to see what comes out at the end.
And it's definitely an interesting point because the level of tech that you're describing, I think a lot of people who are not particularly technical or familiar with the tech field have this feeling towards it as like, okay, well, they're computer coding guys. Like I don't think the general population sees what Google has done as a creative thing. And now I'm doing the quoties.
See, I grew up on computers prior to it being a computer revolution.
Yeah.
And I can remember what search was like prior to Google. In fact, I can remember my college was actually one of the earliest internet connections. Like it's like Institute number 11 on the internet sort of thing. And our library had this absolutely amazing search feature which would allow you to search not just the collection here, but the collection of like 150 other universities, and it used something called Gopher.
Gopher. Okay. Good name.
And if you were to like see what Gopher looks like and see how you had to use it, how this thing whole worked, and then you look at what Google does, you'd be like, oh.
Yeah.
It's kind of like people who pick up an iPhone now and they can't picture what the smartphone was in 2003, which I do because it was a freaking horrible mess.
Yeah.
Just that one moment of transition and the entire idea of what you can do changed in every way possible, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And Burning Man does the same thing. Burning Man, for people who are kind of used to seeing Burning Man as this big, massive thing, you can't see how many ways it's changed from what it was because so many people want to work on it, so many people want to be creative around it.
Yeah.
The...
Ever evolving.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because... And what you're describing, like, that's been sort of the view that I'd had with all these... What you're looking at with even like companies like Google or even Facebook, like they are building the next chapter in humanity. It just happens to be that it's on another layer of consciousness, which we refer to as the World Wide Web, the internet. And now it feels like there's such a massive backlash against these very same groups of creative people, because now you have like the K Street, the attitude on a lot of the conversation that's happening around the community about these massive plug and play camps and how K Street has become super elitist and the playground for the wealthy tech billionaires, and they're not actually getting out there and getting creative. But they were in no small part contributors to where Burning Man is today. It's just a different generation.
Not really.
You don't think so?
Well, so I don't have nearly emotional response a lot of people do to the plug and play camps.
Yeah.
I do think the current response the org had was actually a pretty decent one.
Let me tell you, full disclosure, I agree with you, but I know that this is a conversation people are curious about, so I have to ask.
But the K Street thing is different from those early billionaires.
Okay.
Yes, the early billionaires, as they went along, they had those awesome RV location, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of those early ones are also people who are heavily funders of the big artwork out there.
The current ones are not.
Yeah, I mean, there was a... How to describe this? From what I'm aware of and what I know of and what I've watched grow,
Sure.
you know, there's a huge difference between I can put together a nice camp myself for me and my friends, and I happen to be a billionaire, so I can make it really damn nice, and I'm putting a camp together for billionaires to make myself money.
Yeah.
I don't agree with the latter, but I also don't know how, other than the choices Org has done, you can really differentiate it from everything else everybody does on the playa just amped again. You know, like last year on the playa, I had a meal plan. I paid $125 and I got meals every day from this meal plan. I didn't have to go bring a freezer. I didn't have to go bring the cooking gear. I didn't have to go bring blah, blah, blah. All that stuff was just taken care of for me. Well, if I do that, and maybe I have another friend who's doing a collective for shade structures and another for, like, to a certain point, they avoided responsibility of those who participated in those sorts of camp.
Yeah.
But I also see the same basic question basically get answered if, you know, if my friends and I get together and do it, how is that really different from those people over there? Yeah. Why do I get to have some editorial evidence of their relationship that allows me to feel superior?
Yeah.
But the flip side is that I expect them to produce something for the playa if they're going to do a camp like that.
So let's just say, like, specifically Google, for example. You have all these...
It's not Google who does a camp out there. It's
sure.
David Brin and Sergio, or whatever his name is. Mm-hmm. They have their own camp.
Yeah.
They're friends who've been going to the Burning Man since 1994.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you expecting the two billionaires who've been going for 20 years to have for their camp?
Sure. All the good shit.
Right. Like, they probably had good shit before you knew good shit existed.
It feels like it's the same... I mean, I could be wrong, but it feels to me like it's that same group, though, that's getting the backlash, but they've been going forever.
No, that whole K Street thing was not the Google camp. Totally unrelated camps.
Sure.
The stuff on the K Street was, you know...
I'm referring to the perception of the groups. I think a lot of them are getting lumped together. Quite possibly.
And, gee, people lumping too many people into a concept, that's never happened in human history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't argue that, probably. I have seen the difference between what they call plug and play and turnkey and there's like a third term in there as well, like safari camps.
Yeah.
And there really is a difference between, like, people putting it on from themselves, which is really what the Google camp is. They put it on from themselves.
Sure.
And somebody putting it on with the goal of being the person everybody hires to do it.
Yeah.
You know, that I do find there is a difference there.
Land at the airport, got your drug menu. Yeah.
Maybe that happens in Google camp. I don't know.
Yeah, I can tell you, know what, the Million Money March that we were referring to earlier, the moment I lost interest was I kept trying to converse with people around me. And it could have just been my positioning, don't get me wrong. And it was a fun, adorable little idea, but I felt like no matter who I talked to in that particular group, like one guy I turned to and I'm just chatting with him, and he completely out of nowhere says, yep, gonna be flying out of here right after burn and landing in and I forget what, I think somewhere in Orange County, landing and going to a yacht party. It's gonna be amazing. And I mean, he's just like bragging about his yacht party that he's planning on getting to, that he's gonna fly into personally.
Have you never had one of the LA burners tell you the commercial he's gonna be in?
Yes.
Have you never had a San Francisco burner tell you about the startup he's working for? Sometimes there are just conversations you're like, I don't care.
I felt like in the Million Money March, I got a lot of that. I feel like it was that sort of like, it was like a very touristy event. And that could have just been where I was standing.
Or it could be true.
But it kept happening around me. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to walk with this anymore. I was not making new friends, I felt like.
I very rarely do in circumstances like that anyway. You know, if I was in the Million Bunny March, I'd either have gone with friends that I already care about, or if I'm going by myself, I probably wouldn't have gone.
Yeah.
Like, I would have been more interested in people or things where I would be singular with other singulars.
Yeah.
Whereas the Million Bunny March, like, it feels, you know, that has nothing to do with like connecting with the people next to you. Like, yeah, you're in a bunny costume like me. Great. Just because you're wearing a tutu doesn't mean that we're good friends here.
Important. These are important life lessons.
Right?
Important life lessons that must be learned. Baz, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
It's been an amazing conversation.
Excellent.
All kinds of... There it is. All right, you can tweet me directly at Mr. Arash, that's MRARSH, and when discussing the show, please do use the hashtag #BurnerPodcast. Please leave us a review on iTunes. Can't talk. Leave us a review on iTunes, or get involved in some discussions or start some discussions at the Burner Podcast Facebook pages. There's a group page and there's a fan page. Help us get some exposure. I can't just be exposing myself all by my lonesome. That tune you heard during the break is by Duckman. I know my friend Cable was complaining about the sounds. Maybe we'll do one of the different songs from Duckman for the next show. Check out more of his music at duckmansd.bandcamp.com, and if you're a musician in the community, send us a link to your stuff using the contact page at burnerpodcast.com, and we'll try valiantly to share it. This episode is produced by Meg King. If you have any questions or suggestions for future guests, shoot them over to Meg King. She is on Twitter at @ThatMegKing. Our online editor is Alpi. She writes and curates the blog and can be reached on Twitter as well at Burner_podcast. The underscore is important. Burner_podcast on Twitter. And as always, you can just use the contact form at burnerpodcast.com. The Burner Podcast theme song is America's Horse with No Name, remix produced by Joman. Check out his stuff at soundcloud.com/DJ Joman. Hope you'll join us next time we release new episodes on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. So, till next time, love and light and all that other crap. Good night.
You can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you